guys, we are back with another video. I'm Marcus.
I'm Chantel.
And we are Meet the Simmons. So, before I start, I need you to give our public service announcement.
We would like you to please like and subscribe. It really assists us with the algorithm and we'll be most appreciative. Please like, subscribe, and share. Ding!
This is another installment of our communication series. Today we're going to talk about listening. Listening is the lost art of listening. Nobody listens.
I like that title.
Yeah, nobody listens anymore. One thing we found when coaching and counseling couples is that there really comes a time where listening just doesn't happen because they assume that they know what their partner's thinking, what they're saying, what they're gonna say, and that is a very, very big mistake to make, I think, in a relationship. Because if you start thinking that you know what a person is gonna say, then you automatically stop listening. You automatically stop listening. And so one thing you got to understand is that listening is a skill. To be a good active listener is a skill. It is not something we are born with. Just like we're not good communicators and we're not born as good listeners.
Right.
And it has a lot to do with human beings being inherently selfish. We are. Human beings are inherently selfish, and listening is a selfless act because it doesn't. It requires you to put yourself to the side and actually look into another person and listen to what they're saying and actually try to process it.
I think to your point, what you just said, I think a lot of people assume that they are good at listening, but like you said, it's a skill that you have to learn how to master. And it's so much deeper than just the reverberation of sound. But it's so much bigger than that. It's the active art of really being in tune with what your partner is saying and actually, like you said, processing it and taking the data that you need to make decisions or even further the communication. So it's important that you practice that skill.
And I think the first step in being a good listener is realizing that you're not one. I think that really is the first step. It's like the 12th step. You have to admit that you have a problem.
Yeah.
Just know that you're probably not a good listener. People really aren't. And some ways to tell if you're not a good listener, if you have to ask people to repeat themselves constantly, if people tell you something and they forget, if somebody tells you, oh, well, my favorite color is blue. And then 2 weeks later, you're like, oh, what's your favorite color again?
Yeah.
You don't remember. That's because you're not listening. You're not listening. Most of the time, people say I'm forgetful. People are like, oh, I'm so forgetful. No, you really just aren't listening.
You're not paying attention.
You're not paying attention. So you're all in your head. And so in a relationship, that translates to you not listening to your partner. And it creates frustration because you never listen to me. You never listen. I hear it all the time.
And it's something that you can really work at daily. It's a skill that you can easily apply and work at. It just takes consistent effort.
Yeah, and this is how you do it. So number one is listening to understand, not respond. That's a big one. And that's something that you probably heard before, but that's a big issue in couples and in marriage because people they automatically they know what their partner's going to say. They think they know, and or they already have their own preconceived notion, and they're like, well, as soon as she stopped talking, or as soon as he stopped talking, I'm gonna hit him with this. That's not gonna get you down the road. That's not active listening. Active listening is you actually hearing the words they're saying, listening to the words they're saying, and processing it before you speak, and not cutting them off.
Yeah.
Not stepping on each other. So I think listening to understand, not respond is dual because you can act like you're listening. You can give all the physical cues,
the nonverbal, the nodding, and the
ones that, and we all get used to it.
Yeah.
We get in a marriage when you've been with somebody so long, you know how to kind of give them what they want. But that's not helping you though.
Yeah.
Especially if the person says something important and they're pouring their heart out, or maybe it's not important, but maybe it's important to them. Maybe something they just need you to hear them all, and that's called empathetic listening. Can I explain what empathetic listening is?
Yeah, you're listening for that understanding piece. You're putting yourself kind of in the emotional space of where your partner is in that moment. So you are putting yourself in the space of your spouse. Like you're thinking about, well, if I'm pouring my heart out to you about kind of some stressors on my job, and if you're being an empathetic listener, you are kind of putting yourself in the place of what I'm saying, in the emotional seat.
And often what will happen, especially as men, we want to go into fix-it mode. Our wives will come home from work, or there'll be a situation or something where they're upset and they want you to listen to them, and then you go into, okay, Well, what are we going to do about it? Well, how are you going to fix it? Well, did you think about this? Did you try that? A lot of times, guys, our wives just want to talk. She just wants to talk. She just wants you to listen. What do you do that helps me out? What did you learn to do to help me out with that?
Oh my goodness.
Because as a young man, I was a problem solver. She had a problem, I'm ready to fix it. But tell them what you did for me.
I would say to you, I don't need you to fix it. I just need you to listen. And that literally lets him off the hook. He doesn't have to try to go into solve it mode. Immediately he knows to turn off that problem solving part of his brain, and he is just engaged and active listening. And then he can go into empathetic listening as well.
And that's very common in a lot of relationships, and a lot of men struggle with that. And it's not a struggle because it's one of the 4 P's. That's one of the 4 P's of people pop. Problem solving is a big piece of why you're there, man. So it's okay to go into that mode, but it's also okay when your wife lets you know, I don't need you to solve the problem. There's really nothing you can do about it right now. I just need you to listen. And you could take a breath and just sit back and go, I'm so sorry, sweetie, that you're going through that. Or that empathetic listening piece, have compassion, have patience with her. Let her ramble on for a few minutes,
And honestly, I was just thinking as you were talking, that is solving the problem. It's just a different spin on it. The problem that I needed solved wasn't for you to come up with strategies for what I need to do for my career or whatever. The problem I needed solved was I needed someone I needed to be affirmed. I needed to know that someone cared. So in that moment, the problem was I didn't feel cared for. So you did solve a problem.
Yeah.
It's just a different level of it, I guess.
And then there are times when she does want, she's calling me.
Then I'll be like, what do you think? Okay, so I'm frustrated with my job. You've been hearing me come home saying I'm frustrated. What do you think I should do? I need some advice. Boom.
Yep.
Then he knows to help me with strategy and look, have you thought about this?
And the way you could do it when you're actively listening is let her get her piece out, and then you say, okay, you can ask like clarifying questions. Okay, so this is what happened, and you can get the whole story, and she can kind of explain what happened, or he can explain what happened, and then you can do your problem solving piece as a man, and even as a wife, you can help your husband to understand what he may need to consider, some things he may need to do.
Right.
So another problem with listening is we all have what we call filters. You ever played telephone when we were kids? Like whisper, and by the time it gets to the last person, it's like almost totally different message.
Yes, that's what makes it fun.
Because we all have filters. We all hear things differently. So I could tell you, and it could be a slight tone inflection, or it could just be something that the situation that could trigger you. You have to be mindful of your triggers. We always say that you got to be mindful of your triggers. You got to be mindful of the way you process information. And so I may say something that I think is benign, and it could trigger her.
Right.
Because it may be something that I've done in the past. It could be something from her childhood. It could be just that she's having a bad day. Same thing with me. But you have to be mindful of those things when you are communicating with somebody. So it's important that you ask those clarifying questions. So when you said this, what did you mean?
That's right.
Can you help me understand that a little bit better? Before you jump to getting mad, angry, frustrated, make sure that person was saying what you interpolated that they were saying. Maybe it's just you.
Yeah.
Maybe you just having a bad day. Maybe they did mean something by it, but you gotta at least try to understand it, get the benefit of the doubt, because what's gonna happen is if you keep getting angry every time a person says something that you don't like, then it's gonna shut them down, and there's gonna be no communication. And so it's really important that you listen carefully. And let's dig a little deeper into the filters.
Yeah.
Because your filters are determined. The way you process information, the way you hear things, the way you respond to things is directly correlated to how you were raised, your belief system, things, traumas, things you've been through. So a lot of times when the person is saying something, that you're interpreting it through your own filter. Like we said, you're interpreting it the way you think it was said. Prime example, a lot of I'll say from a male standpoint, a lot of ladies, young ladies that are married now, didn't grow up with a father in their home. So they don't understand the way men communicate, because we do communicate differently.
Yes, you do.
You do communicate differently. So my sisters had my father, who's a great father. So they understand the way men communicate. So when I talk to my sisters, or especially my little sisters, if I'm giving them advice or something, it's very direct. It's very direct. A lot of people take that as being rude, condescending.
Rash,
I hate mansplaining. No, I'm trying to get a point across to you. So a lot of ladies come to us and they're like, I don't like the way he talks to me. So my job then is to help the man understand she doesn't understand the way men talk. So you gotta repackage your you gotta my wife calls it the pretty plate. You gotta repackage that plate to where it's palatable where she can understand it until she gets to the point where she understands that you are not being rude or mean. This is just how men talk. We're very direct in our communication. So if your wife did not grow up with a man around her, or he was abusive, or he was absent, or he was very, he was mean, he was abusive, then she may not be used to that.
Right.
And so a lot of times, and I always tell these women that they want this big masculine leader type guy, this alpha male type guy. Well, alpha males, we don't give that. We don't just, it ain't just, everything ain't soft and everything ain't always just sweet. And so a lot of couples come to us and they're like, well, everything's just mean. He's just mean. Well, no, he's trying to get a point across to you. But you're spending up all the money, though, baby. Yeah, he's trying to get a point across to you that maybe you're in violation.
Yeah, y'all keep talking about the same thing. You spend all the money, and he's a little frustrated.
Talking about the same thing over and over again, and you don't understand that he has a picture in mind. He has a vision for this family, and you are out of line. You're out of line. Same thing for the men. A lot of men have a problem. A lot of our young ladies grew up in a very female-dominated home. And so it's tough when a man's trying to come in there and maybe he was raised in a home, especially if you're of our color and our reflection, our culture. A lot of our young men were raised in a female-dominated society and home. Yeah. And so you want him to be his leader. He's trying to figure it out. He's like, I don't know. What do you think? What do you want to do, sweetheart? And women get frustrated because men always deferring to her and asking for her, but he's used to that. So you need to be patient with him and hear where he's coming from. Before you marry this person, you got to understand where they come from. There are very few men who are these great masculine leaders that grew up in a female-dominated home. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard for a man to get, unless he had uncles, brothers, cousins, somebody who took him under his wing, took him under the wing and showed him that. It's extremely difficult. So if you have a man that does not have, this is the questions you want to ask, you probably want to just kind of be patient with him because it's going to take time. It's going to take time for him to grow into the man that you want him to be and the man that you need him to be to properly lead your family. There's a syndrome that you can get that happens a lot when emotions get high. Ooh. What is it called?
Flat-brained syndrome.
Explain that to them.
Flat brain syndrome is, imagine your brain is this nice, squishy, pliable muscle that's in our heads, right? But when you are having a heated conversation, a little heated fellowship, as our brother would say, emotions get heightened and your brain almost kind of goes kaput. It kind of flattens a little bit. And what that means is you're not able to really process things as sharply as you typically would because your emotional state is at a really heightened state. So because of that, you're not able to really process, communicate well. Everything kind of shuts down for a little bit. The best thing to do in that state is really to calm down. Yes. You might need to walk away. You might need to reconvene in about 10 minutes. So that's pretty much what it is.
Yeah, and flat brain syndrome could happen at any moment. It could happen to any of it. It could happen on a job. It could happen when you're at your partner. It could happen with your kids.
Because remember, triggers.
Yeah, whenever you get triggered and whenever those emotions get high, and when you get emotional, your body secretes certain chemicals. And a lot of times when we get frustrated, when we get angry, when we get sad, your body goes into that fight or flight mode. And you literally are getting ready to go to war. You're getting ready to fight. So when I used to play football, I would play in front of hundreds of people we'd be playing in front of, and I couldn't hear a thing. I could hear the crowd. All I could hear was the quarterback, my teammates, and sometimes my coach, because my mind was so focused on what was going on. So that can happen to you because it was when you play a sport like as rough and tumble as football, you're in a heightened emotional state for hours. You are fully engaged in that for hours. So what can happen in a relationship is that happens. Soon as things get, brain shuts off, I got to defend myself. Yeah. I got to defend my position. And you're not getting anything done that way. Nothing's getting done. And so this is the old wives' tale. Don't go to bed angry. Sometimes you need to just go to bed. Sometimes you need to hit the reset button. Hey, we'll talk about this tomorrow. So our last and final point about listening is a lot of communication in relationships and just period is nonverbal. Nonverbal. So if I'm talking to you and I'm seeing this, lip smacking, all that stuff like that, that's letting me know you're not liking what I'm saying. So that's not going to help me to get my point across to you, because then I'm going to get defensive because I'm already like, oh, she gonna go off of me, so I got to get what I got to say out before she go off.
A lot of times that's used as a manipulation tool to try to shut that person down so that you can stop talking. So I'm listening to you, go ahead, I'm listening. And I'm leaning over and my posture's changing. I'm pulling away from you, body language, or I'm doing some closed body language,
turning away. I'm seeing it,
all those things. Are you done yet? Like the looking up, like I'm breaking the eyesight with you, and so people do all those things just so you stop talking and I get what I want. Are you done? Because I'm ready to respond.
So you gotta practice staying calm. You gotta practice maintaining eye contact, even if you don't like what they're saying, you don't agree with what they're saying, you got to give them the opportunity to say their piece, because the goal of every discussion is peace. That should be it. It shouldn't be about being right. I want my way. It should be peace. And if peace means that I swallow my pride and say, you know what, sweetie, you're right. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, that's what it is. But it cannot be where one person is always the one wrong and one person is always the one right, because it has to be some kind of agreement there. So listening is one of the most important things that you could do in a relationship, and if you're not doing it well, you need to learn how to do it well. It is a skill. It's not something that you're going to pick up. People are like, oh, you guys have been married 21 years and how'd you know? We read books, we talk, we study this thing. So if you want a great marriage begins with communication. Relationships begin with communication. So if you want a great next 30, 40 years, you might want to get on your job. And your job is husband. Your job is wife. Yeah. So you might want to get on your job, just like you have continuing education on your job and you got training days and you got stuff like that. You need to get in the business of learning more about being a better communicator and being a better source for your spouse. It is not all about you. And with that, that's enough said.